ashamed or they feel so put down about the situation that it ends up causing emotional separation between the parent and the child. We've had times where our kids did not want to talk to us. We've had times where we accidentally broke that. We've had times where our kids have avoided us. Mine's avoided me before. And we've had to learn how to bring that back, how to restore that trust, that belief, that comfort, so we don't feel like our kids are avoiding us and growing up where they don't even know us and where we feel like we don't even know them.
First, removing some of the negative experience that we carry from our past.
Which, in another way of sharing, which was really good, what we're talking about is when we communicate with our kids and it's too harsh, or it's too damaging, or it's we communicate in a way where the child understands that they did something wrong, but they feel so ashamed or they feel so put down about the situation that it ends up causing emotional separation between the parent and the child, which we're trying to now teach people, because we've had to go through it, how to avoid it. Or if they've already created damage by accident, of course. No parent, I don't believe any parent wants to do that, like literally. It just happens that way sometimes. What we teach parents how to do is how to recreate that bond with their child, so that way they can feel comfortable around their kids, so their kids can feel comfortable around them, so they can communicate, so they can actually laugh together, so that way they can actually talk to their kids almost like a friend. Not necessarily a friend where they're at the same level, but have moments of friendship where they can actually enjoy each other, but still have that parental control per se, that guidance where if it's time to put down a rule, the child's not going to run away. They'll actually be willing to listen because there's trust that's been established between the parent and child, which sounds so simple in some cases, but oftentimes isn't when the moment is heated, when the child's really angry or when the parents are really angry. It's not so simple during those times. And we're here, again, not to point fingers like we know everything. What we're sharing is what we have had to go through. We've had times where our kids did not want to talk to us. We've had times where we accidentally broke that bond of trust. We've had times where our kids have avoided us. Mine's avoided me before. And we've had to learn how to bring that back, how to restore that trust, that belief, that comfort, so we don't feel like our kids are avoiding us and growing up where they don't even know us and where we feel like we don't even know them. Too often we hear that from parents these days in the work that we do. And we want to put this channel out to help parents who we can't talk to directly, who we can't reach, and let them know you don't have to live like that forever. There are ways to get around it, to beat it, to do better. But it first takes a little bit of self-work on ourselves before we go and try to work on our children to reestablish that bond and connection.
It is that, include myself too. I mean, I want to be honest. 3 kids. The oldest one didn't get the best version of me, I have to say. She got the worst version.
Oftentimes the first one gets it that way because the parents are new.
Yeah.
Back in our day, like our day, there was no, there's no popularity in going to parent school. There was no
YouTube channel.
There was no YouTube, there was no channels like this. There was no podcast.
Right.
There was no nothing.
Right.
Like the most you get are books, and books are great. But now that we're older, we realize a lot of people write books where they just take the theory of how to do something and they don't even have life experience on how to do that thing. And now, look, I'm not demonizing books. Like, take the time to read. There's a lot of great authors out there. But I am saying that back in our time, maybe in yours too, how many places did you know to go to find great resources on how to improve your communication with your child, how to bond or mend a broken relationship with your kid, how to reestablish trust when the trust was gone or lost, Like, that was not common talk around our circles.
Not just common, I actually went to parenting class and I was laughed
She
at.
was one of the few people that
I was
actually
frustrated. I love my daughter, but I couldn't talk to her. This is almost, oh my God, 20 years ago. I swear. I went and I told my family, my spouse, and my relative, my mom, they thought I was crazy. You don't need that. They think there's something wrong with me. Oh, you need to go, not me. So I thought there was something wrong with me, and I was embarrassed because no one I know went to parenting school. There was no such a thing. But now, oh my God, it's a skill. It's a skill that is one of the biggest skills, because I know being a parent, your kids are one of your most precious things that you ever have in your life, in our life. And no amount of money can replace that connection with your children. That's what we hear, because we have experienced some breakthroughs in this journey that can help you if you have challenge communicating with your children. And we have find a few techniques that help us solve this challenge so fast, and that's what we're talking about this right now. So boils down to in the past, cultural thing, whatever you didn't do, just accept that and move on.
But what she's referring to is that the work that we do, that we had to first do on ourselves. We had to learn it, practice it, mess it up a little bit, practice it again, and to a point where eventually we got good enough to create really amazing, long-lasting results. The work that we've learned to do involves being able to take our own pain as parents, things that have happened to us, whether it's from our own parents or something that happened along the way in our childhood. Maybe somebody wronged us, maybe we felt like we're taken advantage of, maybe beat up or something, or whatever it was, abused, no matter what it is. You know, when those situations from our past, or even if it's happening right now in your present, if the emotions are not resolved, and what I mean by resolved is where you can look back at that time and not feel so triggered by it, not so negatively triggered. If a parent can get to that place where they can look back at that memory and feel a level of neutral, where they're emotionally not riled up about it, but they're not excited either. They look at it like it's like an old TV show, something that you kind of just see that's just there. Unless they can get to that place, then oftentimes that's where the mistake of being too short-tempered or being not understanding or being critical of our kids comes from. It comes not from the children, although of course that's a part of it too. You know, if you're making dinner and your kid's just like throwing their arms everywhere, and smacks over the sauce and it's all over the floor, well, you know, that you might let that go the first time, but if it happens 5 or 6 times, you might lose your shit, right? Let's just be real about it. When you lose your shit, the question is, are you losing it because of that moment? Or are you losing it because that moment triggered something much bigger inside of you that accidentally leaked out onto the child? And here's how you know, because for those of you watching, you might be saying, well, how do you know? Like, how do you know the difference? I didn't know the difference until the past few years, so let me share my experience. You know the difference, well, I know the difference when before I talk to my kid, I do a self-check on my emotional stability. And in that moment, I'll ask myself, before I talk to my daughter, how am I feeling? Am I feeling critical? Am I feeling upset? Am I angry? Am I short-tempered? Am I exhausted? And if there's a yes to any of those, the next question I gotta ask myself, where did that originate from? And then I'll realize, okay, for example, I'm still stressed out about something that we had to deal with at work. I'm still tired because I only slept 5 hours last night. I should have slept 7. I usually sleep around 6 or 7. I got 5. So I'm a little exhausted. It's also later in the evening where I gotta talk to her. and I had to run back home. So I still have that charge in me. I'm a little bit rushed. So I'm feeling rushed. Before I talk to my daughter, I have to deal with this emotion first, this set of negative emotions. One of the simplest ways that I have is I'll go to the gym, I'll go for a run, I'll do something physical to exhaust myself a little bit to get that negative energy out. And once I feel that I'm at a more balanced place inside my body, not so much my head, because the issues are still there, the problems are still there, but how I feel about those negative things is very different. There's less charge. What I'll do is then, once I feel more balanced, I'll then go to my daughter and I'll say, hey, kiddo, I always refer to her as kiddo. Hey, kiddo, we gotta have a talk about something that happened recently. Something that we don't necessarily agree that you did, but we don't want to make you wrong about it, but we gotta discuss it. So hear that language, right? I don't want to make you wrong. So instantly my daughter goes, okay, they're not gonna plow on me because I messed up. Like she already knew that she made a mistake. And I can read my daughter now, so her actions tell me a lot. So by telling her, okay, I'm not here to make you wrong, but I'm here to discuss with you something that we didn't agree with. Now what I'm doing is I'm verbalizing to her, okay, it might have been something you've done, but it's not you. It was an action that you took that maybe you're not even fully aware of. But we got to talk about this because it causes a disruption in our home. So now what my daughter feels is that, yeah, okay, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe if I'm a daughter, I'm like, okay, maybe I made a mistake, but they're not trying to wrong me for it. It's something that I can deal with because it's not just about me, it's about something I did. So now we can have a mature conversation where she doesn't feel smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller because she messed up on something we classify as messed up. But instead, we can separate her from the action, and the most important part, we can come from a place that's firm but still loving. That when we speak to her, if she starts to cry or get upset or feel shrunk, we're not so in our own heads as parents, like so on them, that we can't even read what the hell's going on in our kid's face, which used to be the situation before. That's what I had growing up. That's what my daughter, my stepdaughter had growing up in her life, in previous times in her life. And even a little bit with me before I learned these skills, which I felt I had to learn because I could see I was losing this relationship that I wanted to have with my kid. So what ended up happening is that because I was able, like for me, and I'm talking about one particular situation, because I went to the gym, because I did a little bit of exercise, because I listened to some personal development, like a favorite podcast of mine, because I took some self-time first, which only took like 20 minutes. It wasn't like a whole day. It wasn't like I did a marathon or something. It was just 20 minutes. Because I took that extra 20 minutes, and when I came back to her, I was calm enough to express my dislike on something that she took action on. And when I could see that she was, like, and this is my daughter, when she starts feeling like, oh man, I really fucked up, she'll do this. She'll start to crumble. She'll start to lower her chin. And instead of looking at me, she'll do this. She'll have a hard time. Now, those are what we call micro expressions. That's what we're trained to look for. So when I see her doing that, she'll still be like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, no, I messed that up. But if I see she's shrinking, now what I can do is I can draw her back. And the way I draw her back emotionally to remind her, I'm upset with what you did, but I still love you. It's because kids can forget that. They can forget that the parent still loves them. So when I notice that, what I'll do then is I'll lean over to her and I'll say, hey kiddo, let me just stop right here. Let me stop this discussion right now just to remind you. I'm upset with what you did, with that action that you took, but I still love you. You still remember that, right? And she'll be like, yeah. Like she almost looked confused, like, oh shit, yeah, I almost forgot about that. Yeah, and then what I'll see is her body language will start to come back up. And instead of being so afraid to look at me, she'll start to look at me again. Now, this is important because if we are going to discipline our children, if we're going to be in a place where we can be friendly, but when it's time to remind them, hey, that's not acceptable in our household, we can still do it from a place of authority without crushing them with our authority. And that's something that I think isn't so common these days when it comes to educating our kids. And I'm not saying it's easy. You know it's not easy. I know that you know it's not easy. Nothing, let me make this really clear. Nothing in this conversation that we explain is meant to feel like it's supposed to be easy. But what we are doing is that we're educating and sharing that when things feel lost, it's very possible to get it back. Because sometimes parents give up. They give up because they're like, oh, I crushed my kid. And then instead of trying to figure out or learn, like, how do I bring that back? Sometimes that just becomes the level of acceptance. Like, oh, well, it's their fault anyway. Like, they screwed up anyway. Or the parents are so ashamed or embarrassed that they want to hide that from the kid. So they just end up like puffing up a little bit more. Like, yeah, you screwed that up. That's right. That's right. Don't do that again. But deep down inside, they're like, oh, why did I even say that? I've seen that. Now you have too. Where they'll act a certain way in front of the kid, but then behind closed doors, they're like, oh, I screwed that up so bad. And again, I've been guilty of that before too. So going back to my story to close this off, what ended up happening is because I was able to stay calm enough in the beginning, during the conversations, when I got emotionally charged, and again, I'm not perfect, I made mistakes. When I could see she was shrinking, I could calm myself down, remind myself, hey, you're not here to be hard on her. You're here to teach her the lesson. Now, this is me doing my self-talk. And then I could draw her back and reconnect. Sometimes it takes a kinesthetic touch. So there's a couple of moments where she didn't want to look at me, like she's tearing. And when she tears, I tear. Because I love my daughter and I don't want to hurt her. I want her to learn the lesson, but I don't want her to be crushed by dad. So when she tears, I tear a little bit, and then I lean over to her. So a couple times I lean over to her and I'm like, hey, kiddo, and I'll do this because I'm a bigger dude. Like, I'm not huge, but compared to my daughter, I look massive, right? Come on. So I know I can physically look intimidating. So when I sit next to her, I shrink up, so I'm kind of like her size, so she doesn't feel intimidated. Then I'll say, hey kiddo, I know that you're feeling really upset or angry right now. And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm not feeling that. I'm like, well, what are you feeling? She's like, I don't know. So instantly you can tell, like, she's feeling something, but she doesn't want to express it. It's too hard. So verbally she can't do it. What I normally do then is I'll say, kiddo, just, can I just hold your hand for a minute? And she almost look at me like, what? Like, what do you, what? No, just, look, can you just let me hold your hand for a minute? So she won't give me her hand, okay? She won't be like, here, Dad. She won't do that. She'll be like, she stick her finger out like that. So what I did is I matched it and I just held her finger. And then I leaned over a little more and I said, hey, look, I know we're having a hard time with this talk right now, but please remember, I love you. I'm not here to hurt you or make you ashamed. You're here to learn a lesson, and the lesson's a hard one. But I'm still on your side, I'm still on your team, I'm still your dad. And I'm still the number one guy in your life that's here to watch out for you. And I'm also the guy that's here to make sure that you don't continue making these kinds of actions, because out there in the real world, you will be severely punished for certain things that you do. So you gotta learn the lesson here so life is smoother for you out there. You get that, right? That's really why we're having this talk. Yeah, I'm upset, but I'm worried. You keep this up, it's really gonna hurt you when you get out there in the real world. Do you want that? Instantly, she was like, oh yeah, shit, this is not about just this moment of now. Dad's trying to help prepare me for out there in real life. It took a minute. It wasn't like oh, she got it right away. She actually just sat there like, and when a kid does this, like they're confused, I've learned this. Don't say anything, say nothing. Because what they're doing is they're processing. In NLP language, what we've learned is that there's two different ways of thinking. This is important for you guys. Quick tip. When you're dealing with your child, you will have one of two thinkers in front of you. You will have a digital thinker and you will have an analog thinker. Digital analog, what's the difference? When we're talking to somebody, in this case it's our kids, if we ask them to recall a memory, if they can go, yeah, I remember that, then they're digital. Digital meaning that they can go from where they are now in their mind, and then they can travel back to that time that you're discussing with them, almost like a quantum leap. They just go there. An analog thinker is someone where you tell them about a memory, something that you maybe disliked that they did, and instead of going there, they go like this. Okay, well, this is today. What did I do yesterday? Oh, what did I do the day before that? Oh, last week? Okay, last month. Let's say it's 6 months ago. They will literally go back in their head up to 6 months, almost like day by day. And you can see it because they usually do this. Their eyes will go left and right. In NLP language, what we learn is when a person constantly looks down, they're tapping into their emotions. When they constantly look up, they're either creating a memory, like they're creating an imagination, or they're recalling a memory. And if they look left and right, then that means they're recalling something they heard. Not 100% accurate, but more often than less. So I saw my daughter doing this. So she was recalling everything. She was trying to see how she felt. She's tapping how she felt. She's trying to remember anything that I said or that we discussed. And then she's trying to look for in her memory banks as to what we were talking about. That took probably a minute, but it felt like 5 minutes. So what did I do? Because I'm aware of this, I just sat there. I just hang on to her little finger, and I just nodded. In my head, I was like, come on, kid. You remember this stuff, right? Come on, as parents, sometimes we get impatient too. But no matter how we feel, if the goal is to sustain that connection with our kids, you gotta be patient. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, it doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes. You gotta give them the space for them to get to that place of recalling the memory. If we're talking about something that we discussed, or something that we agreed on, or something that they did, that in the moment they don't remember. So to close off this section of my story, what ended up happening is she remembered that we agreed on something. She forgot in the moment of her actions that we had agreed. She realized that she broke an agreement between us. And then I start to see her sink like shame. It looked like shame or guilt. It was just like this moment of, oh, Dad, you're right. And then from there, when I saw her sink more, I just I reaffirmed her. Kiddo, I know you probably didn't mean it. And I'm not upset with you because you did it. I'm just upset because I feel hurt. I feel hurt because I felt like you made a choice to do something that you didn't quite think about in terms of how that's going to affect me and your mom. And as long as we live together under the same household, we got to watch out for each other. We got to be thoughtful enough of each other. So for all three of us inside our home, we feel happy. Mom and me aren't here just to make ourselves happy and not care about you. We try to make home as comfortable for you as we can. But we also need to know that you're in a place where you're also thinking about us in that way too. And we don't ask for much. It's like really basic things, like keep your room semi-clean, at least know where your stuff is. So when we walk in, we don't step on everything, and just do your chores and be nice. Like it's not a big list, people. Like we don't have a huge list right now because right now we're in the process of reestablishing her confidence, her self-belief, her self-love, because she came from a place that was in a broken home. So we're taking our time on that because before we teach her technical skills, we want to make sure her emotional skills are well established. So she doesn't climb the ladder of life really well and become successful, but then crumble because her emotions aren't in a place of strength, right?
So important.
It's super important. It's super important. So in closing, this is what we're talking about, is having the ability before we go and talk to our kids Number one, we first self-check. How are we feeling? And if there's any negative emotions inside of us that's rupturing, or that's maybe more than what it should be, then step two, we go do something about it. In this case, I talked about going to the gym. It could be a walk. It could be a jog. It could be going and doing something. It has to be physical. Like, you can't watch Netflix and be like, okay, I'm good. Because it's a physical, emotions create physical responses. So to remove a negative emotion, you have to create a physical response, a physical action. So if you like tennis, go play tennis. If you like swimming, go swim. Like, do something physical until you're able to get your emotions to a place of calmness that's settled. Once you're settled, then step number three, then we go and have the discussion with our kids. But we do it in a way where we're not just saying, you messed up. I can't say never, that was wrong of me. We try our best to be very aware that we don't lead the conversation by saying, you, child, are the mistake. Instead, what we do is we say, the action that you took was a mistake, or it was painful, or it was not thoughtful. We try to avoid saying you're wrong, because what does the word wrong mean? Wrong just means that they didn't know what to do that was right. But if we say you're wrong as a person, what does that imply? It implies that they as a human are wrong, but that's not the truth. The truth is that the action that they took was either wrong for our environment, or it wasn't something that created peace or some harmony inside our home, which sounds a little bit like, call it what you want, but at the end of the day, we want a happy home. Like, that's the standard that we created for our family. And I know you're creating that for your family too. And we're constantly trying to raise the bar on being happy at home. So that was the short end of, if you can call it short, of the explanation on the process or the steps. If you want to know more detail about how we do that, then feel free to message us, let us know, shoot us a comment down below. But to give you the highlight, what we refer to always is we use technology from clinical hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming, NLP for short. Those are both subconscious communication tools that teach us how to speak to our subconscious. The brain has a conscious and a subconscious, right? The subconscious part, it's almost like, it's like a supercomputer. We're raised to just expect to know how to use it, but most people don't. And the time that you know that you don't know how to use it is when you want to create a result. And in your heart, you know it's the right thing to do. But you can't take the actions to do it because something in your head or in your gut is just holding you back. Example, I want to talk to my kid and I want to tell them I'm sorry because I messed that up. But your gut goes, oh no, but I can't show them that I'm weak.
Something wrong in the software of the computer.
Right, so there's a clash, right?
Yeah, there's some virus in the software that, there is,
right.
So we need to fix that virus.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what the technology teaches us how to do. It teaches us how to do a proper self-check. So at the end of the day, no matter how you cut it, the end result is, if I need to go and speak to my daughter, but I have resistance, I can remove the resistance and freely speak to her. If I'm angry and I need to talk to her, but I cannot bring that anger to the table because it wasn't her fault to begin with, and even if it was, I don't want to show that kind of anger to her. There's ways that we can automatically remove and resolve that anger, not suppress it, because suppress it means you're trying to hold it in. But the moment they trigger you, it's like, boom, it blows up. I don't mean that. I mean, get to the point where even when you think about that thing that made you angry, pissed off, raged, no matter how you try, that rage doesn't come back, that anger doesn't come back. It's like, there's the memory, I'm shutting my eyes as the example, there's the memory, the thing that made me so angry. But I'm feeling like, right now. Like, I'm feeling like I'm just there. I'm reliving it. But it's not bugging me anymore. And that applies for either anger or fear, sadness, guilt, any one of those. And that's what we're talking about here, is have that ability. Now, you might be thinking, is that even possible? We're here to let you know, hell yeah, it is. Because if you look at our backgrounds, we didn't grow up with this stuff. We didn't even know it existed at this level until, I don't know, for me, it was just 2017 is when I really started learning this stuff as a practitioner. You started learning this back in, what, 2020, 2021? Right?
I only experience a lot myself now. That's why I'm able to talk to my
Past
kids.
couple of years, absolutely.
It's hard to have love in front, show love in front of your kid with this anger in front of it. Anger, I mean anger, like here's love, but here's anger, right? We need to remove this part, and then no matter what happened, you will show love or compassion for them, understanding, right? Even though when they're throwing tantrum, even though when they're angry or frustrated with you, because it's all you have is love language. You give them love language. But if you have angry language, you're going to give it to them. So what happens? Angry and anger resistant, creates disconnections. So what we have is the ability to help you remove that anger or sadness, whatever that's holding you back from showing your love and compassion for your loved one. It's powerful, and in emotions, anger emotions, and they store in your subconscious mind, which they show up automatically without meaning. So, oh my God, why did I just scream at him or her, right? And it's not your fault. It's not your fault at all. Some of you might have accumulated this emotions from your childhood, from your parents, which your parents probably didn't know it either, right? Or their grandparents or your grandparents, right? So it's good, but the good news is there's something that, a technique that we can use to help you or other people who is out there already. That's why we're so excited to talk about this, because leaving this world a better place for our loved ones is the most exciting things ever.
And it starts with being able to leave our loved ones with an ability to better control themselves and better express themselves in a way that's healthy, in a way that's secure, in a way that's confident, and in a way where they don't always need validation from other people in order to create that feeling in themselves. Right? Like right now, what we're seeing is a lot of our young people, and even adults too, it's part of life, we're not blaming or making wrong. What we're saying is that we see a lot of people out there that are constantly looking for validation. Tell me I'm good enough, help me appreciate myself, show me that I can love myself more. That becomes very detrimental to especially a child, because if they grow up and believing that, then they never find their real happiness. And that's why we see children that grow up as adults, and the older that they get, when they don't resolve those issues, and they don't understand how to create self-respect, self-belief, self-love, then they end up growing up really angry or really depressed. And then they become useless in terms of not bringing out their best potential. They become emotionally useless because they could barely take care of themselves emotionally. They can't go out and help anybody else then. If anything, that's where we start seeing people that grow up angry and depressed and all that other stuff. And without meaning to, oftentimes they end up hurting other people that it's around them. And those other people end up feeling repelled. Then that person, if that's our kid, grows up thinking, well, why the hell does everybody run away from me? Why is it so hard for me to have relationships, friendships? Why do I always feel alone? Even if I'm in a room full of people, why do I constantly feel like nobody gets me, or I'm by myself? Those are the kind of challenges that adults end up having to deal with. A lot of times it stems from their childhood. We want parents to know that their kids don't have to grow up like that. And if parents have that now, we want them to know they don't have to feel stuck with that. They just have to learn some new ways of thinking, and then realize that there's a whole other section to the brain that they haven't really tapped into yet. Again, not like we're know-it-alls. We've discovered this for ourselves, and we're on the journey now of being able to excel even more. So the stuff that we do have now, the results we have now, not only is it exciting, not only is it like mind-blowing, but it's life-changing. Because the fears that we had of like, man, am I going to know my kids as they get older? Does my kid love me? Does my kid even have any respect for me? Like, that's what I used to think. Those are gone. There's no question. My daughter grew up with thoughts of suicide. Because there was a point in her life where she felt like she wasn't good enough. Her biological dad at the time was somebody who she believed and loved, obviously. And the guy just walked out on her.
That must be hard.
I'm not going to say names. I'm not here to disrespect anyone. Whatever they went through is what they went through, for right, wrong, or different. Obviously, I don't agree with that, but that's not my life. It's not my place to say.
You don't know what he was going through.
Yeah, I didn't know what he was going through.
Yeah.
But I do know how that resulted in my child, in my stepdaughter. It resulted in her feeling completely in complete anguish, in despair, in uncertainty, uncertain of her own self-worth. Because in her mind, she was like, my God, if the one man that's here to protect me, to watch out for me, the one man who I loved first, my father, if that man can't even stay with me, what the hell's wrong with me? Like, what, am I not good enough? Like, that's the kind of mindset she had to grow up with. And that's the kind of mindset I received when I became dad to her. So I had to work with that and restore self-belief in her coming from that.
Which is very lucky to have you.
You're so sweet. Which is why I feel so confident and secure to share this, because I know that if I can learn this stuff, a guy who used to be like party animal, let's get drunk, let's get messed up, that was me in my 20s. That was who I was. I wasn't like this. It's not like who I am now. But if a guy like me can come from that, learn to clean up my life, learn to clean up my mindset and my emotional, and then get to a point where I could become good enough to teach that to someone, and then share that with my daughter, and then have her grow up in a much more confident, loving, healthy mindset and emotional place, then I know that anybody else watching this can also bring themselves back and reestablish that connection with their kids too. In most cases. I can't say all, I don't know everyone's situation.
So we're so excited.
But that's why we're excited.
Anything is possible, whatever you have, how you feel now, you don't have to feel stuck.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We hope you liked this video today. We hope it was insightful and helpful. If it was for you, please support us by just giving us a quick free like. And if you got any comments that you want to share, go ahead and hit the comment section down below. Watch for more, go ahead and click the subscribe. Thanks for being here.